Hey everybody, just wanted to take a minute today and kind of talk about primer pocket repair. I'm on quite a few long range hunting forums and different rifle forums, and I always see guys talking about throwing out brass because primer pockets get loose. And I really don't care how they get loose. Some guys load them too hot, we all know that, and they loosen up. Other guys like myself, they just get loose over time. My rifle likes to shoot at the top end, towards max load, and it's extremely accurate. It's not an overpressure situation, but the primer pockets do get loose over time, probably 4 or 5 firings. A lot of guys are in that same boat. It doesn't mean they're running their rifles too hot. It means we don't have as good as brass as we used to, and I think that's everybody knows that. So what I'm going to do today is make a quick video here of how I repair primer pockets, and I didn't come up with this. There was somebody that had a video on YouTube, and I saw it on the Long Range Hunting Forum 2 or 3 years ago. So I'm not taking credit for this. I've just made some refinements to it, and I wanted to make a little bit higher quality video and kind of go into a little bit more detail on how I do this because it's been of a lot of value to me. So what I've got here is just some tools that I use. I start with some pin gauges because you have to be able to measure your primer pocket hole to see where you're even at. So I don't recommend calipers. Calipers will work if that's all you've got, but I found that pin gauges are definitely the most accurate. You can get them online. I'll try and get some links posted below the video so you can see where to buy them. But a primer in a primer pocket, at least a primer, is roughly 210, 0.210 inches. So I start with a 210 pin gauge, and I've got some others, and I've got a 209. Those are primarily what I use. So as my first check, I'll use a 210 pin gauge. And I'll get up here and see if I can get the camera to focus on it so you can see what I'm talking about here. So you'll see it says 210 there. It's just a little precision ground piece of round stock essentially. So what I've got here is a 300 rum case. It's a Nosler case. I don't use Nosler anymore in my particular rifle. I've just found it to be too soft. It's really uniform, I'll give them that, but the case head's soft. This one I already know the primer pocket's loose in it. Another tool we're going to need is a 5/8 hardened ball. I think this one's chromoly. You can get those online pretty cheap. I found that 5/8 is just the right size for large primer pocket repair. If you're using a smaller case that has a small primer pocket, you might want to go 1/2 inch or maybe even smaller on the ball. The other piece I've got here, and this is for 30 cal, it's only going to work on 30 cal, is a 5/16 grade 8 bolt fine thread, and it's like 4 inches long. So once you size your neck on your case, you're going to need to take a few thousandths off the bolt for it to fit. And I don't remember, it was like 5-6 thousandths I had to take off of this. And you want it to have a nice snug fit in your case. You want it to slide through your case and clear down to the bottom of the primer pocket with a little resistance. It doesn't need to be super tight. You don't want it loose because you don't want that bolt flopping around in the case, so you want it snug. The other important thing I've done, and I'll try and get a picture of this again, if I can get it to focus here. I've taken and squared up the end of this bowl. I feel like that's really important because you want that to sit flat down on the inside of your primer pocket area so that it's striking flat. It's got nice sharp edges on it, and you can see on the bowl I've kind of taken a few thousandths off. So I've got a small hammer here. You don't want to use a big hammer. That's a good way to ruin your brass and get carried away really quick. Just use a small hammer. It's better to take a few stabs at it to get the primer pocket where you want it than to take a big hammer and just go overboard. Flat file, you'll need a flat file. I'll show you how that works in a minute. So those are the basic tools that we need. It's all we need. I've got a bench of ice over here. You'll need something to support the ball in. So I will take a pause here and get set up and kind of show you how the repair process actually works. All right, so before I get carried away setting up in the vise to size this, I want to show you guys 209 kind of how I do this as far as checking the primer pocket for fit. So I've got a 210 gauge here. I'm going to go ahead, get this to where you can see. I'm going to go ahead and slip it in. That 210 gauge shouldn't fall in like that. I shouldn't be able to get that 210 gauge in there at all, and it just falls into the bottom. In fact, it's got a little bit of wiggle to it, so we know we need to fix that for sure. And that's kind of what I use as my gauge to know in my reloading process whether I need to fix that or not. Okay, so as you can see, I've got the ball sitting in the vise. I don't clamp it in the vise. The ball just sits on some divots that are there. The first time you use it, it'll kind of swage a little bit of metal down in your vise, and then you'll have kind of a nice little area that the ball will just sit. You don't need to clamp it in the vise. So I got my brass casing here. I'm going to go ahead and shove my bolt in till the bottom's out. Again, it's got a good snug fit, but I can shove it in by hand. You shouldn't have to beat it down to get to the bottom of the primer pocket. If you do, you need to take a little more metal off your bolt. So it's got a good fit. I'm going to go ahead and give it a whack here, and then we'll check our progress and see where we're at. Get lined up and nice and square over your ball. I'm going to take my 210 pin gauge here, see where we're at. Okay, so we're still loose. We did gain some, so we need to go some more. It's better to do this in small steps than to go too much at one time. Okay, we're real close. My 210 goes, and it kind of gets stuck and then goes some more, so I need to go just probably another 1/2 thousandth. I don't want that 210 gauge to be able to go in at all. I'm guessing that whack there will probably do it. No, still just a tiny bit more. That would hold a primer, but I want a little bit tighter fit than that. Okay. Okay. The 210 doesn't go. It goes just a tiny bit and gets stuck. I'm going to call that good. The next step, I'll take my 209 thousandths pin gauge as kind of a check. I want that to go in a little bit snug. I need to go just a tiny bit more. There we go. The idea is to get that 209 thousandths pin gauge to go in snug. And that will ensure that your 210 primer will fit in there with a really good fit. And you can actually go tighter than that. That's a great fit. You can go tighter than that. Your primers just are going to seat harder. And there's just really no need. So I'm going to go ahead and give you guys a shot of what this looks like. You can see it's got a really nice even bevel after the repair process. Didn't mess the case up or do anything weird. It's just got a really nice even bevel to it. So my next step is going to be obviously pull the bolt out. Now sometimes after this process there will be a little bit of raised metal around the primer pocket, and that's where the file comes in. I'm just going to skim it across this good sharp file. I'm going to kind of check my progress. In fact, let me show you this so you can see what I'm talking about here. I've skimmed across it, and get the light right here. You can see where there's just a little raised area there around the primer pocket where my file is starting to skim. So I'm going to go a little bit more because I want to have the file making contact all the way across the case head. We want a good flat case head. And you're probably only taking maybe a 1/2 thousandth off here, so it's not an issue at all. You're not machining your case, screwing your headspace up, anything like that. We're only talking probably a 1/2 thousandths. So I'll focus in again here. Get the light. And you can see now my file has made contact all the way across that case. So now we have an excellent repair on the primer pocket. Case head's flat. This thing is probably at the pressure levels I'm running at. I could probably shoot 3 or 4 more times before I would notice any growth on this. This is a repair that will hold. Just really impressed. Really glad that I ran across this a couple years ago, because I don't throw brass out anymore. Guys, don't throw your brass out. It's too expensive. 300 grum brass, everybody knows how expensive that is, and it's been hard to come by at some points. So don't throw it out. Just repair it. This is a good solid repair. Yeah, so hope you enjoy the video, and I'll post some links below on some of the tooling that I've used to do this.